So this video is going to show you how to multiply a decimal times a decimal. Now, it's always important to make sure that you're also estimating so that you can check to see if your answer is reasonable. And most of our estimating today is going to be with whole number, rounding to the nearest whole number estimating, or another way to say that is front end estimating. Okay. So the first problem I have is 9 and 3/10 times 4 and 1/10. What I want to do is I want to round to my whole number. Okay, so I see that there's a 9 in the ones place. I look next door, and since this 3 is less than a 5, I'm going to round this to 9. Okay, remember you can think of that as money. If I have $9.30, that's much closer to $9 than it is to $10. And I'll do the same process here. If I look next door, the 1 is less than a 5, so I'm going to round this to 4. And again, if I think money, if I have $4.10, that's much closer to $4 than it is to 5. So now I just do my fact. 9 times 4 is 36. So my real product has to be close to 36. Now I did round both of these down. So this 36 should be an underestimate. Okay, so it should be close to 36, but the real answer should be over 36. So I'm going to write my 9 and 3/10 and times my 4 and 1/10 over here. I want you to forget that there's decimals there. Okay, we do not place a decimal here because in multiplication we do not line up the decimal points. Okay, that's something that's different from every other operation. When I am adding, subtracting, or dividing with decimals, I always want to line up that decimal point. But when I'm multiplying, I do not line up the decimal point. Okay, and that's where I have to count over. So we'll talk about that at the end. So right now I'm going to treat this just like it's 93 times 41. So 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 9 is 9. I'm going to place a 0 in my second row. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 9 is 36, plus 1 is 37. And now I add. That's a 3, 11, 8, and 3. So if I did not have these decimals and I was doing 93 times 41, the answer to that would be 3,813. But look at this over here. We said that our answer has to be close to 36. So is that a reasonable answer? Absolutely not. Okay, so if I wasn't counting over and I looked at this 36 and 38 or 3,813, isn't 38 close to 36? It absolutely is. Okay, and 36, remember, is less than 38. So I'm thinking that my decimal needs to go here just because of that logical reasoning there, that 38 is close to 36. Okay, I'm going to erase that there for a minute though, because I want you to see how we get to that decimal. Okay, well, remember when we were multiplying whole numbers times decimals, we were counting over. But when we had a whole number and a decimal, we only had one factor that had a decimal. This time we have more than one factor that has a decimal. So I'm going to start at the right and I count over. That has one place value that has a decimal. Okay, same thing here. Start at the right and I count over. That has 1. Well, 1 plus 1 is 2. That means that my answer needs to go over, my decimal point needs to go over 2 places. Okay, so I'm going to show you that again. I counted over 1 place, I counted over one place. 1 plus 1 is 2. So I have to start here and count over 2 places. And now here we are with that logical reasoning that we looked at before. 38 is close to 36, and 36 is less than 38. So this is a reasonable answer. Okay, so let me erase some of this. And we'll do another one. All right, so this time we are going to do 3 2/10 times 6/10. Okay, well, I can use my front end estimation here, okay, and my whole number estimation. I can look next door and say that 3 2/10 is closer to 3. I have a couple of options that I can do for this 6/10. Okay, I can change it to 1 because it's kind of close to 1. I could say that if I was on a number line and this was 0 and this is 1 and the midpoint is 5/10, 6/10 would be right here. So it's also very close to a half. Okay, either one of those would work. If you're feeling really confident about your skills, you could maybe even keep the 6/10. So I'm going to show you all 3 of these since all 3 are options, and then we'll evaluate with the real answer and see which one is closer. So 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times half. Ooh, that one you got to think for a minute. Think about $3. Okay, if you have $3, whoops, and you want to share that between you and one other person, right? I know that each of us would get $1. Okay, that would be $2. And there would be another dollar to split. So that means each of us would get 50 cents. Okay, so that means that if 2 people are splitting $3, we get $1.50. Okay, so 1.5 for that answer. Okay, now on this, what's 3 times 6? 3 times 6 is 18. Okay, but remember this isn't 6, this is 6/10. So I have to count over that decimal point. So that was over 1 place. So this would be over 1 place. Okay, so we have 3 possible estimations there. So they're all pretty close, okay? And we need to see now what the actual answer is. So I'm going to write my 3 2/10 times my 6/10. Now remember, I'm forgetting about the decimals. The decimals don't matter right now. So really this is like 32 times 6. So 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 1 is 19. Okay. Now, before we count over up here, let's look over here and see. What do you notice? Well, I noticed that 192 is not anywhere near any of these, so I definitely need to have a decimal in there someplace. Okay, so if I'm thinking about it, if I put a decimal here, that would be 19 2/10, and that still is not very close. Okay, if I put a decimal here between the 1 and the 9, ooh, that's getting close because that would be 1 92/100, and that's really close to 1 8/10. If I put a decimal here in front of the 1 on the left side, that would be getting further away because that would be like almost like 19 cents. Okay, and 19 cents is not close. If I made these estimates into money, that's what we'd be looking at. $3, $1.50, and $1.80. But if I have a decimal here with a 0, this would be like 19 cents. Okay, and that's not close to any of those. So that's just some logical reasoning. And so now let's count over. So in this factor, we go over one place. In this factor, we go over one place. Well, 1 plus 1 is 2. So I start here on the right and I go over 2 places. So I'm saying the answer is $1.92. Okay, so look, all of those are still pretty close, aren't they? Okay, so this one's probably the closest because we were able to keep the 6/10 and we only changed the 3 2/10 to 3. So that's why this one's probably the closest estimate. And then this one is still pretty close because we changed 3 2/10 to 3 and 6/10 to 5/10. Okay, and this one's still relatively close, right? But since I changed the 6/10 to 1, it was a little bit further away than these other two. But they're still all very close to the actual answer. All right, so number 3, we're going to do 7/10 times 1 9/10. All right, so I have a couple of options for my 7/10. I think that I would like to change the 7/10. Well, let's look at always look at a number line. So I have 0, I have 1, and the midpoint is 5/10. Okay, well, remember we were talking before, the midpoint here, if I'm thinking about quarters, is 25 hundredths. The midpoint here, again, thinking about quarters, is 75. Okay, so that's like 25 cents, 50 cents, 75 cents, and then $1. Okay, so if my midpoint is 5/10 and this is 75 hundredths, this 7/10 is probably going to go pretty close over here. Okay, so I can see that that's actually closer to 5/10, closer to a half than it is to a whole. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do both so you can see what they both look like. So I'm going to change 7/10 to a half because that's closer over here on the number line, but I'm also going to change it to a whole because it is still pretty close to 1. And now I need to decide what to do with 1 9/10. Well, I think I'm going to round to the nearest whole number. If I look next door, this 9 makes the 1 go up. So this is like $1.90. Okay, $1.90 is going to be closer to $2 than it is to $1. I'm going to do that on both of these. Okay, well, remember multiplying by a half. So multiplying by a half is the same as dividing by 2. Okay, so what is half of 2? 1. Okay, what is one group of 2? 2. So I'm thinking that the answer to 7/10 times 1 9/10 is probably somewhere between 1 and 2. Okay, that's helpful because if I get like 84 as an answer, that's probably not correct. Okay, and I need to look and see if the decimal is in the right place. So I'm going to do, since this has 2 digits and this really only has 1 digit, I think I'm going to write the 1 9/10 on the top and the 7/10 on the bottom. Will that change my answer? Is 7/10 times 1 9/10 going to give me the same answer? Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to write it this way just because it feels easier to me. Even though it's the same exact thing that's going on, this feels easier, and so it feels friendlier to do it this way. So I'm going to do it this way. So again, I'm going to forget that the decimals are there, deal with the decimals at the end. So 7 times 9 is 63. 7 times 1 is 7 plus 6 is 13. And I don't need to do anything with the 0 because it would just be a whole row of zeros. So I'm looking here, 133. Well, 133 is definitely not near either one of these estimates. Okay, so again, thinking logically, if I place the decimal here, 13 and 3/10. Is that close to these? Not quite. I mean, somewhat, but not really. So let's see about if we put it here. Is 1 and 33/100 reasonable over here? I would say so, because remember we said we thought that the estimate was between 1 and 2, which that is. Okay, so what if the only other option is to do this? Okay, well, this isn't even a whole number. This is a very small decimal, and we said that it needs to be somewhere between 1 and 2. So if I were to do a number line, and I have 1 here and I have 2 here, this would actually be like way over here. So that's not even close. Okay, so we think that our decimal is going to be 1 and 33/100 because that is between 1 and 2, but we have to check with our counting over strategy. So in this factor, I count over 1. In this factor, I count over 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. So I start from the right. 1, 2, and we were correct. The real answer is 1 and 33/100.